everyone, welcome back to another episode of The Welcome Table with Sydney
and Tatum.
Today we are speaking with Professor Desha Dauchan. Professor Dauchan is an assistant professor of teaching, film, and media studies, as well as seasoned film director with many credits and accolades to her name. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing great, doing great. Thank you for joining us.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Of course, yeah. So before we jump into the interview, we usually like to do a little show and tell to get the audience a little warmed up and also just to let them into our life a little bit more. So This week it's my turn. I'll go first. Very thematic. We voted yesterday, so I brought the jacket that I voted in. And you can see the sticker, proof of the fact that we did our civic duty. So yeah, obviously this is important because this is probably one of the most important elections of our lives.
Literally.
And very high stakes. And that's all I got to say about that.
I love that. I really like that item for this week. Very thematic.
And also this jacket's very cozy. So there's
I heard that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I also voted. I don't have my sticker anymore. It was sitting in the office somewhere, but yeah, I also voted, and I voted with my 18-year-old son.
Nice.
So that was nice to kind of have that experience with him. And we went in our N95 masks and did the whole thing in person, which was really important to me. And I can report that it went really smoothly. So that's, for some reason, it's like, I feel grateful that I live in California and that I live in Los Angeles County. And so it was quite simple. And there was a lot of people there of all, everybody was there, Black, brown, white, everybody. And so that felt good.
Nice.
So am I supposed to share my item now?
Yes. Yes, it's your turn.
Okay. Because it's so weird because we're in this COVID time. And so I'm sure, other adults and professors could probably relate to this, but there's a lot of home projects happening where people are reorganizing, cleaning out things. So I'm in my garage that probably has 20 years worth of attention that needs to, so you're going through every box to kind of see what you can, what you can get rid of. And so in my purging process, I located this production notebook from when I was a grad student at UCLA. And so a production notebook is you're making a film and you put your script in there and your cast list and your crew list and all your ideas and your storyboards and script analysis and notes. And I found this image, and I can't remember, I'm gonna just share it with you. I can't remember the name of this artist, which I feel really bad about sharing this work without remembering the name of the artist, but you can see it's from a notebook, right? And so I have it and so then I have all my handwriting on the bottom where it talks about what I thought about the image and how it was an inspiration to me. So I'll just read it. Because obviously it's an assignment. And I talked about the lensing. I said, this is interesting to me because light seems to be coming from a couple of different places, from behind her and a splash in front, giving highlights in the cheeks. The light is falling on the block. The purple saturation conveys mood. She's pensive. It's also kind of regal, purple, gold, queen-like. She sits on a pedestal throne. Compositionally, the corner of the block centers us. It pulls us in. It implies depth. It's all about her. And then I go on to talk about, other things about where I think the lens was and what kind of lens and the textures and all that. But I was just wow, you were deep when you were 20. You were 23.
I was just
wow.
Amazing.
But it's also cool to see where you began, and to see what still rings true for you after a long journey, So that's my object today.
That was beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. That's so funny. You're you are deep when you're 20.
That is so cool. I was certainly not that deep when I was 20.
I did want to talk. So, okay, let's get it a deeper dive into you. Our first question would be, what got you started in the film industry? Did you have a particular film director, actor that kind of piqued your interest? Who inspired you to pursue your directorial and professional career?
Okay, so I guess for me, I always like to say, and everyone doesn't love this, but I say I fell in love with film. So it's kind of two periods. It's like when you're growing up as a child and you see the first thing that kind of sparks your interest. So the first thing that like really sparked my interest as a kid was The Color Purple, and it was a Steven Spielberg film. And the reason why I think it was because it was the first time that I'd been to the movies to see, and I was really young when that came out. I probably shouldn't have been there because I think it was a rated R movie, but I was really young when that movie came out. But to see Miss Celie on the big screen and to see those characters, you know what I mean? Like that I don't think I'd seen a Black casted movie before I'd seen that one on the big screen. And then I went on to, go to the library and get the Alice Walker book and then read. And so that was being kind of drawn in by this whole, that we can tell our stories on the screen, not even really knowing that, just kind of you're feeling pulled to it. And then, and just it was poetic and lyrical and beautiful. And the relationship between the sisters, I think kind of drew me in. And then you grow up in the 80s and you grow up to Spike Lee, that there's a personality and a Black man making films. And so I think that's what kind of started this idea that we can make a film. And then when I was at Howard University, I'd done things creatively before. Like I used to sing, I used to dance, I tried to write plays, I tried to do various things, but I took a class in film and we just kind of fell in love with it. Being able to sit with the group and say, I have an idea, this is what I want to see. And back then we were still shooting film. So you would shoot this project, and you had a vision in your mind. And I remember one of the guys in my group who ended up being a really great friend after that, he was a graphic designer. So he could literally sketch the things that I was saying I wanted to see. And so we were doing like storyboards before we knew what storyboards were. Like, yeah, I want to see this, and I want to see her eye, and I want to see the Washington Monument, I want to see the water, and then you go out with this 8mm camera and you shoot film, and then you got to put it in the lab. So it's not like video where you're like seeing what it's going to look like. You're imagining it and kind of peering through the viewfinder, but to see that actual project come to life, and to see it kind of like twinkle on the screen in the dark and it be what I saw in my mind, I just fell in love. And so that pulled me in for sure. And then I was influenced by a whole bunch of other great filmmakers, from Haile Garima, who was a mentor of mine at Howard University, and seeing Sankofa, seeing Daughters of the Dust in high school and not knowing what to make of it because you can't quite digest it, to coming to UCLA and having Casey Lemon's Eve's Bayou playing right in Westwood. So yeah, it's a lot of inspiration.
Nice. Thank you for sharing that. That's so insightful. Like I can hear your passion, and I'm sort of starting to imagine it as you speak about it, as you speak about yourself coming to that realization. Yeah. So that's nice.
Yeah, the way that you break it down is even very cinematic. And I think that's a testament to how deep you are into your passions
and how you see it.
That's awesome. That's amazing. Yeah, that's a skill to like take somebody through your thoughts and how you see something. Yeah. That's so cool. So you briefly talked about Howard University, and we know that I believe you studied film and television there, and then you went to UCLA and you got your MFA in production and direction. So we wanted to know, what was it like observing the difference of the filmmaking process from going to a chiefly Black school, like a historically Black college, to a college where there's a low percentage of Black students? What was that like?
Incredibly different. I mean, well, first of all, I'm a Californian. So I'm a Californian, and people always assume when I say I'm from the Bay Area, they're like, oh, you grew up in Oakland. Didn't grow up in Oakland. Didn't grow up in a Black neighborhood. So me going to UCLA was comfortable. But having had the HBCU journey prior to that, was life-changing and life-shaping in a lot of ways, you know? I think, you know, and thinking about time period specifically, I think coming out of, you know, kids who were growing up in the 80s and becoming teenagers in the 90s, we were drawn to HBCUs because of School Days, Spike Lee School Days, because of A Different World, because of Rodney King, because of, you know, so many things were pulling us to have this Black experience. So then you get there and, you know, you're studying film and media there, and everything is from a Black perspective. And so all of our voices matter. We're all Black, we're all making film, we're all, you know, and it's all different. You know, everyone's doing something, and it doesn't even really resemble the industry per se, because you have someone who's doing comedy and someone who's doing something lyrical or poetic, and we're being influenced by, you know, African-American professors and West African professors. And, you know, so you're really being encouraged to develop your own voice. And then also to look at media as political, you know, that it means something, and that you don't just make something and put it out there for, you know, just for the sake of doing it, right? So, and it doesn't mean everyone was wanting to do that, but you're at least being challenged with that. And so then when you come to a UCLA, where, you know, you're one of 2 Black students selected in that class for that year. Yeah, because I think it was maybe like 21 of us, I think, and then there were 2 Black students out of that directing class.
Wow.
It's interesting though, because I always say they were casting, back then we didn't have reality shows, so I was like, oh, this is like the cast of The Real World, because it was like, well, you're gonna have the, you know, the gay guy, the gay girl, the Black guy, the Black girl, the Asian guy, the Asian. That's how we were, and it was beautiful, and we loved each other, and it was great. But I will say this, and I can get this now looking back, I felt so ready to take it on because I went to Howard. Like, and I don't, if ever you meet people from Howard, they will constantly say over and over, well, you know, I went to Howard. There's something about Howard in particular that people are really proud Bisons. And so because I'd went to Howard, I was just prepared to take it on. I think I'd already had a sense of where I was headed and what my voice was, that I had a great time at UCLA.
Awesome.
Because I wasn't really like hungering for attention or support. I was able to navigate it with ease, but I also had some good Black professors when I was at UCLA. And I realized now in retrospect that those professors were usually lecturers, and they had been lobbied for by movements of students who wanted to make sure that we had representation on the faculty before. So yeah, it's an interesting, but I feel like they partner well together, at least for me. Yeah.
Yeah, so having that experience at Howard definitely prepared you for maybe not seeing yourself represented in the MFA program, because you had that like that home base starting out.
I did, and I mean, I think it shapes even the way you approach it, because I was coming from a very community-minded way of making films. When I got on campus, it's like, yeah, everybody's here. You just gotta find them. Like, so the first film I made, or one of the first things I made, you know, I was like, oh, well, there's this Black art space in Los Angeles called St. Elmo's Village, and I'm gonna go over there and I'm gonna talk to them and see if they'll let me shoot there. Or the second piece I made, I was like, oh, I think I want like a West African drummer, and I want dancers, and I'm gonna go to the class on campus. I'm gonna meet the teacher, and then I talk to the teacher, and the teacher's gonna be in my film, and now she's an actress, and the dancer's gonna be extras. And so you know how to build community, or even, you know, where am I gonna live? Oh, I'm gonna go move to Lamar Park because that's where the community is. So Howard instilled in me a very community-minded sense that I was able to navigate UCLA. And there was a tradition of that at UCLA before we were there. That had passed away, but I was at least aware of it, you know?
So we touched briefly on your first film. So we want to know a little bit more about that. So what was it about? When did you start making it? How was that process like for you? We just want to know about it.
Okay. So first, because I've yet to make a feature-length film. So when I'm talking about films, those films were student projects, right? They were short films. And I'd made some at Howard before I came to UCLA.
Okay.
And so I'm trying to think about what's the best one. My thesis film, we'll talk about that film, that project, and what that experience was like. That experience was interesting because it kind of bridged the UCLA Howard thing for me, because I knew that I wanted a different landscape than Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm.
So I wrote the piece to shoot in Washington, DC. And so me and just a couple of UCLA friends flew to DC to shoot the project. And so one of my best friends, who was still in Washington, DC, and went through the film program, was there, and she produced it in DC. And then I also had a friend who was a cinematographer who was at AFI. And we'd shot something together here in Los Angeles. And he also went to Howard. So we went back to shoot it. So again, it was about engaging community. The film was called Whispers. We shot, and it was about a man it's about a man who has an experience, where he questions whether or not he's losing his sanity, or if he's having an experience with demons. And so it's about him waking up one morning and taking the subway and seeing his dead girlfriend. And in that moment of chasing her, trying to reach her, he steps through several different kind of dimensions of guilt, and things that he felt like he put in place to cause her death. And then, he wakes up inside of a bank, and he's in the middle of an armed robbery that somehow he's responsible for. And then he realizes that all of the faces that he'd seen along the way were setting him up, right? They were all in the bank, right?
Oh.
And so then at the end of that moment, he's inside of a cop car, and he looks out the window and he sees the little boy who he was playing with on the train, and he has black eyes, and that's the end, right? And it was called Whispers. And so we shot that in DC, and we shot in the Metro, which, I don't know if you've ever seen the Metro in DC, but it's a really interesting design to the tunnels, and it kind of has this green cast. And so yeah, we shot that in DC. And again, we engaged both, some of my UCLA friends. We pulled on community there. And so that film went great. And then I came back to Los Angeles with that film. And I should mention this. I was pregnant when I was shooting.
Wow. Look at you.
I was like 4 months pregnant. I had just gotten married maybe a year or two before. So I think I was like 26 or so. And I was 4 months pregnant on that shoot. And nobody knew, because you're 4 months and you're young and nobody knows. But I knew, and I know I was exhausted and tired. And so, yeah, then I flew back to Los Angeles with the film. And then, I spent time with an editor kind of crafting it and working and building it to what I wanted it to be. And that was a great process. I mean, it was a gift. Like, I just felt like I had, with the short films that I'd made before, I was able to kind of build a team around it that really helped me make the vision come true. And then we were fortunate. We were able to get into film festivals. We went to Sundance, among others, the American Black Film Festival. And so, yeah, it did well. And I was really proud of that project.
Yeah, it sounds amazing.
Yeah, especially when you're pregnant. Wow, my goodness, how much hard work that must have been.
Yeah, dude, that sounds exhausting, but also I want to see that movie.
Yes, I want to see. I'm interested now.
No, I'm really into horror, and like we're at I feel like spooky season carries on like into early November.
Yes, and we love spooky season, so we would love to see that.
So email us that movie.
I also want to talk about some other challenges during the project, besides obviously being pregnant. So this is so interesting. Do you think you can describe some observable challenges that you had or that were exacerbated by any anti-Blackness that permeates within the film industry? Is that something you can speak on for that particular piece?
Yeah, I think you know, the anti-Blackness creeps in when you start stepping outside of that independent community filmmaking model, right? Like, as long as you're in that mindset, you will seek out you'll seek out the mentors, the collaborators that you want. And because you're funding it yourself, or you've got a grant, or, you know, so because, I mean, I definitely look back now and realize, oh, I didn't get as much money, you know, as maybe some other students got in their grant. But I also remember not being fazed by it. You know, like I remember like some people got $30,000 grants, and I think maybe I got like 10 or something like that. And it was like, all right, well, it's merit-based, it's a meritocracy. You know, I didn't get it. But because I was so scrappy in the community, I was like, I'll figure out 10, I will rock 10. Like, it's fine. But it's when you get out in the industry that I think it becomes challenging. You know what I mean? And that's where you feel the anti-Blackness. When, because like, for example, that film got me meetings. It got me, and you know, the relationships I built along the way, but it got me representation. And so they're like, write a script. And I'm like, great, I'm gonna write a script. And you know, it's going to be similar to this, and this guy is going to be a character in this, but the lead is going to be a Black woman, and she's going to be the attorney that's trying to get him off, but then she realizes that she has clairvoyant abilities, and everyone's interested in that. But then the first thing they'll say is, great, who's the white man in the film? That was, you know, but I feel like something about, you know, an awareness that would exist, I felt ready to I already had a character that could be that. You get what I mean? Like, I was already like, well, that's fine, because I know that the priest that's actually a demon can actually be the, you know, and it's a great character. And, you know, so there's ways to navigate it. But I think the overarching issue was just that the window felt so very narrow, or at least it did at that time. It's because it's a very different industry now. And I would say it's still probably too narrow. But in terms of like, you know, is there an opportunity to make this film about a Black woman with this experience? This is pre Get Out. This is pre, you know, Black horror, Black spooky moment. And it just felt like it was very narrow, and the opportunities felt like there just weren't very many. So that's where I feel like the anti-Blackness plays out. But I also feel like we were just very aware of that as we were trying to move through it. And so you can't take the no's. There's no's anyway. It's already a hard industry. But on top of that, you know, just that many opportunities.
Yeah, just having to like consciously maneuver, knowing that you have to like just pander to these played out tropes in order for people to think that your film is watchable. I could see how that could be frustrating, but you know, a lot of people who are quite successful, I mean, unfortunately they had to stick it out and play to those pandering roles until they could make like a Get Out, or like make a film that doesn't play into stereotypes or, you know, the typical audience that people tend to, you know, I guess.
Screen.
You're right.
I think it's evolving too. I feel hopeful. I feel like there's I mean, they're doing a Candyman. I mean, it's just, there's so much happening.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited.
There's so much happening that's really exciting, and yeah, it feels like a good time. So I don't think it's all gone away. I do think people still need to be really independent minded in terms of, you know, showing and proving. I think technology has changed that. There, you know, when I was coming through, there couldn't be an Insecure, like, because there couldn't have been an awkward Black girl to make an Insecure, you know, because there was no YouTube to make to make the awkward Black girl to make an Insecure. So, you know, things are changing, and there are more people getting opportunities. The door feels like it's widening a bit. So, but anti-Blackness is deep, and I don't think it will disappear overnight. So it's just something we'll always perpetually be pushing against. But I think it's just important to stay strong and to have a vision and to continue to make work, whether it's in an industry or outside the industry.
Right, perfect, beautifully said.
Exactly.
Also, so after you received your MFA and you're coming to UCI, how did that end up happening? Like, you becoming a professor here?
Yeah, so I think I always thought I would teach at some point because I feel like the artists and the voices and like my elders that I valued so much, like the Toni Morrisons and the Maya Angelous and the Haile Garimas they were professors because they had such unique voices. Um, so I knew that, that probably would be but I always thought it would be like when I was like older and stately. But then, the industry goes up and down. And so then you're like, okay, well, you're doing various little things to make money, or you maybe write a script and you make some money and then time, so I felt like, well, I should probably start teaching. So I think I started teaching really fairly early, like just a class, like I'll just teach a class, Um, and before you know it, you're picking up a class and another class and another class, and um, you're building a craft, you're building a skill, and a career. And so, yeah, that just kind of happened earlier than I anticipated. And then someone gave, a colleague, not a colleague, but a actual one of my classmates at UCLA was a professor in film media studies and was like, would you like to teach a summer course? And I was like, sure. And so that's kind of how I got on UCI's radar, is that I taught a summer course. And then it just opened up. UCI was unique in that it would open opportunities for me to create classes, which was something I wasn't doing in other places. Like, well, what would you want to teach? I'm like, well, acting and directing for camera. That'd be great. Write it up. Like, oh, what would you like to teach? Media and activism. That'd be great. Write it up. Right. So it was a place where I could create curriculum and course material, and it just gave me a lot of autonomy. And so that's how I came to UCI. And then I've been here now full time since 2015. So that's been like since I've been on full time.
Yeah, nice. That's awesome. And then kind of playing into one of the classes that you created, which like we think is so cool. What do you think the link is between media and activism? Like, why did you feel the need to make that class?
It's interesting because that's the one class that I can't seem to get it. Like, I feel like everything else caught on like wildfire, like acting and directing for camera, and I teach some different screenwriting courses or TV writing. TV is really popular right now, and so I understand why people are attracted to that. But media and activism, at least one of the reasons I wanted to bring that class is because I really wanted to make that connection for students to have like this sense of literacy, understanding that media actually can create movements, document movements. It can be effective in that way. It can move people, it can change things, it impacts people. And I do think the seeds of that for me come from my Howard experience, understanding that it's always impacting people and moving people in one direction or the other. So that's one of the reasons I created that class. I think that class is now morphing into something else. Like, I'm going to be teaching a class later this year in the spring called LA Rebellion and Ethos and Legacy, right? Where we talk about these LA Rebellion filmmakers, and we look at that movement. And we say LA Rebellion, we're talking about the group of filmmakers that came through UCLA in the late 70s up into the 80s. It was like late 60s and then kind of on through the 80s. But that would be Charles Burnett, who made Killer of Sheep, and Haile Garima, who made Sankofa, and Julie Dash, who made Daughters of the Dust, and Barbara McCullough, and so on and so forth, and really kind of looking at their work, but then looking at what it means to be a community-minded filmmaker, making films about particular communities that don't necessarily have stories centered around them, working class communities, working class Black communities, Gullah communities, slave rebellions and Sankofa, like to make these films, and then with an independent model, an independent voice, and then like, what is the legacy? Like, who are those filmmakers that are continuing to do that work? So, whether it be like a Grace Lee, who made the film American Revolutionary by Grace Lee Boggs, or if we're looking at Damani Baker, who made a film called House on Cocoa Road, where he dives into the archives and talks about his mother being a Panther and them moving to Grenada to be a part of that movement revolution, or even to, A Love Song for Latasha by Sophia. I can't remember her last name. Sophia Nali is the first two names. But where we're exploring, we go into the archives and we're exploring the Latasha Harlan story and really hearing from her sister and best friend, and getting back into that story. So I'll be teaching that class later this year, and then students will be encouraged to then make their own, right? To make a short film that engages community in a community-minded model and thinking about how they may want to kind of impact the world with that. So I think it's just knowing that media is important and powerful, and I think that's what motivates that.
And it goes back to this idea of community that was cultivated with your Howard experience. So it's awesome that you're carrying that on and paying that forward to future filmmakers. Yeah.
I hope so.
Yeah, of course you
Yes,
will. Yeah.
I definitely think so. And you've been a professor at UCI. I'm so excited. I'm sad that I'm a senior because, in all these videos we've been making, like with the welcome table, we've just talked to so many inspiring professors and individuals. I'm like, dang it, like I need more time in my schedule to take some of these classes, but I'm just appreciative to be talking to you and everybody else, all the other individuals as well. But
well, thank you for creating this forum to pull people in. So this is great. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I agree with Sydney. If we had one more year, if we were going to be super seniors, I would take your class.
Another question that we did have was, so you've won so many awards. You've won the Tribeca All Access Award, UCLA's Director Spotlight Award, and so many. What's some advice you could give young filmmakers?
Advice I would give filmmakers is, because I know when we hear the awards and the list of the awards, because that's what we're trained to do, is to recognize, and I've heard this a number of times from other mentors of mine, especially if you're thinking about the industry, is that you cannot be afraid of the no's and the losses, because I put all my W's in the bio, but you don't put all the L's, you don't put all the L's that you took along the way. And so it requires fortitude. It requires the ability to get up and do it again, and to try again, and so to be brave when you're facing the no's. And I'll say, just in honesty, I've had brave times and not so brave times, times where I'm just like, oh, I don't feel like it. Like, I don't want to, it's too much. But then you realize it's like, if you're ever going to get this thing made, and I still have, I have scripts on my shelf, things that I'm writing, things that I want to get done, that I know that I will need to face off with some no's to get out there and share my work and gather the support I need to get them made. So keep going. Face the no's.
That's good advice. That's like great overarching advice, but I think for filmmakers in particular, considering how difficult the industry is, as we discussed, that's like especially, pertinent. You just hang on, you hang on to the back of the car, I guess. I don't know what that analogy was.
For sure. Drive that car.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. Yeah. So do you have any other future projects that are, on their way to coming into fruition? Do you have any future hopes for your professional or personal life?
I'm heavy writing right now. And so, I'm not ready to talk exactly about what I'm working on, but I am developing a feature film. That I really hope to, bring into fruition, whether independently or some larger format. I'm also writing television, so I have a couple of pieces. The one that I'm working on right now, I could talk a little bit about that one. It's called Whose World Is This? And I'm really excited about it. It's a half-hour piece. It takes place in the 90s at Howard. between the Rodney King verdict and the O.J. Simpson verdict, and it's really
that's really
and kind of like the rise of the golden age of hip hop and how this young group of people are coming of age in that moment, and kind of, you know, how these things are shaping them. And so it's a bit of a dramedy. And so I'm really excited about that. That's kind of what's fresh on my fingers right now. But yeah, I'm just, you know, and I love period work. And so I anticipate there'll be quite a few more periods that I will explore, and I enjoy the research of that, right? Being a professor, you're kind of research minded when you have to really think about like what were the 90s as a period and how was this impacting young people, or you know, what in another period I'm looking at is, you know, the 80s, and you know, how crack cocaine impacted families, not just in a snowfall way, but like how were families and communities rocked and shifted in that space of time. So that's kind of, you know, some of the things that are on the tip of my tongue right now.
That's amazing. Wow. We're gonna look out for that within like the next couple of years.
Definitely.
Yes.
Yeah. And if you need extras.
Okay.
Oh, I love that subject matter, how young people are affected by certain historical events, especially with the Rodney King, and also today, right? Like, you know, George Floyd protests, movements, like us as young people, we're obviously affected by that, and that is carried into our own work, our own lives. So yeah, I'm excited for that project.
And it's so crazy, you guys, because I was thinking of this last year. You know, I was like, I'm gonna do this thing and it's gonna be about, and then as all of these events started happening, I was like, oh my God, I have to write it because it's like we're doing it all over again. I feel like I felt that for a long time, just, you know, as you're looking at, you know, really from Trayvon to now, you know, and having to, you know, talk to my son who was growing up, and we have to go see Fruitvale Station, and we have to talk about these things. And one after the other has constantly had me reflecting on Rodney King and how I was 1992 when that verdict came out, and I was graduating from high school, and thus the whole launch, you know, to the HBCU and that whole experience. And when you're living it, you don't see it. You know, but when you're looking back, you're like, oh, and then this, and then this, and then the rise of hip hop, and then, oh my goodness, and then Nas, and then like, you know, it's like the Wu-Tang Clan, and like all these things are happening like simultaneously, and it means something, you know, and then you're wondering how it impacts those people. So yeah, it's just stories upon stories in there.
Yes.
And you guys we're gonna have stories at this time too. I hope that I live long enough to look back and tell this one.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. We really, really appreciate this conversation and having you. You're so warm, so friendly. So thank you so much for coming to talk to us.
Thanks for having me, ladies. All right, it's been great. Thank you guys, and good luck with this platform. I love it, and wishing you guys the best.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Good luck with you too. Not that you need it. You're amazing already.
Thank you. All right, bye-bye.
Okay.
Bye.
All right, guys, thank you so much for watching this episode of The Welcome Table. We had such a great time talking to Desha.
We did.
Yeah, she was awesome. But yeah, in the meantime, this has been Tatum
and Sydney,
and we will catch you guys next time.
Bye.
Bye.